the future is hugely uncertain, but I would bet heavily on AI having a bigger and bigger impact. Get comfortable, competent, and confident with AI.
Welcome to Beyond Billable. This podcast is an exploration of the impact of artificial intelligence on companies that rely on the billable hour. So far, artificial intelligence has caused efficiencies which have mostly been passed on to clients without monetization. But as AI progresses, I foresee it having a way bigger impact than efficiencies alone. There will be winners, there will be losers. And it is my goal to share these changes with you before they happen so that you will stay ahead. In this edition of Beyond Billable, I sit down with Peter Duffy, founder of Titans, legal tech advisor to top UK and US firms, and author of the widely read Legal Tech Trends newsletter. With a background in engineering and deep roots in innovation consulting, Peter brings a rare blend of technical insight and industry savvy. What I loved about this conversation is the contagious enthusiasm Peter has when he talks about AI. I hope he'll inspire you as much as he inspired me. Beyond Billable is a collaboration with NIO House Amsterdam. Welcome, Peter Duffy.
Cheers, thank you very much. Good to be here.
You studied to become an energy engineer.
I did indeed, a long time ago, yes.
I listened to several of your podcasts where you were invited
Yes.
on those podcasts. And so I'd like to do your introduction. Is that okay?
Go for it.
All right. So 3 phases. Number 1, energy engineer, but you didn't do anything with it.
Nope.
You started to launch a bunch of startups, tech startups with your friends. And that was fun, but then you moved on. You got hired by Deloitte Digital, worked as a consultant in the digital sphere, all sorts of interesting projects, all tech related, obviously.
Yeah.
And then you decided to set up your own company, Titans. This is phase 3.
Exactly.
And Deloitte actually hired you back as a consultant for them now.
Yes, yeah.
And that's how you got into all sorts of legal. You did before that was a little other stuff, but then it was all sorts of legal tech advisory stuff.
Exactly, yeah. So very briefly in financial services, helping to build out a bank, and then quickly moved on to the legal space. And that opened up a whole new world that before going into, I would never have pictured myself in this legal world. But having seen it and got involved, very quickly realized, wow, this is an amazing place to be. And this is now nearly 5.5, almost 6 years later. And yeah, I can imagine myself here for the rest of my career.
For the rest of your career, you're going to be in legal tech.
I found my space. I found what I love doing. And yeah, I think that now more than ever, what an exciting time to be where we are. And I can see a long road ahead of being in this space and just seeing the magic of compounding, that it's really a case of, after 5 years in, magic really starts to happen. And just the relationships you build, the knowledge you build up of being in one specific domain. Whereas previously, before being in legal, I loved the challenge and the thrill of hopping industry every year or every year and a half, moving from sports betting to financial services, pharmaceutical, telecom. Amazing. Get dropped in and very quickly having to get up to speed, what are international payments, how does this billing system work, all those different type of things, which is great and it's thrilling and mentally taxing. But there's also a beauty in being in one space for a long time and going real deep and seeing that knowledge compound over time along with those relationships. I love it.
Amazing. Most of your clients are in the UK, right?
So mixture UK and US. So up until last year, the vast majority would have been in UK with a few in mainland Europe as well. Since last year, there's a lot of from the US. So now I'd say the majority US and also some in UK.
Can you talk a little bit about those clients? What type of clients are they? What type of firms?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So it's quite interesting. It's a mixture of, well, firstly, I work with very large firms. So the likes of, say, UK top 50 or large firms also in the US. And a mixture between law firms, alternative legal service providers. In the past, it's been those that were even publicly listed, also now private equity owned. It's a real mix of very large, mostly legal service providers, sometimes in-house teams as well, but mostly on the service provider side. And really, how I would frame it for those clients is those who think big and want to move fast. And they come to us really as we want to go fast, help us go even faster. Like the way I like to frame it is like it's jetpacks for Olympians. They get it, they want to move fast, and it's helping them go accelerate even faster on that journey.
Is it fair to say that, and it's difficult for you to say this because you don't have any scientific data about the European market, but my experience with the UK and the US, but especially the UK, when it comes to document automation, they were so far ahead of Europe. About your clients, they're far ahead of the rest of the market, but the market itself is super competitive and innovative. Am I right?
Yeah, so I'd say the UK has historically been the most advanced when it comes to legal technology and innovation. And it's funny because that's what I started off in, so that's what I know. Yeah. So not having come from a place of minimal innovation, it's landing in that space. That's what I know best. Historically, they have been ahead, and to this day, they're still doing a lot. I think if we compare to mainland Europe, with the caveat that I do less work with mainland Europe, but anecdotally, what I see, I believe UK is likely ahead in a lot of, when it comes to technology deployment, technology adoption. However, of course, there are many people doing great stuff across Europe. But I think the broad sense has been, and it would recognise that the UK has historically been ahead, even ahead of the US. However, that is starting to change, and the US is doing a lot, in particular with AI right now. But that general sentiment of, is the UK ahead of the rest of the world? Historically, it has been up there near the top, and I'd say it's still up there near the top.
What could be explanations for this this hunger for innovation in the UK?
Yeah, so there's probably a few different factors. I think one would be just the number of top-tier firms who have appetite to do things. So at a very basic level, there's, if you think about the size of the market, you have many large firms, and those large firms have gone through the process of building legal tech teams or innovation teams. So just market size helps in a lot of different ways. And secondly, it's hyper competitive, as I'm sure many other markets are as well, but you have all these large players who are looking over their shoulders and seeing all these other players who are doing things, so it really spurs people on. And thirdly, the regulatory landscape in the UK is quite different to mainland Europe or to US and other countries. And it has the rules changed quite some time ago that allowed for these different alternative legal service providers, alternative business services to kind of set up. And what that meant in effect was that you don't have to be a lawyer to own a law firm or to own this legal business. In that way, you can get outside capital, you can give equity to people who do not have a legal qualification. So that definitely helps. It's hard to say exactly how much impact that has had. Like, the market is not dramatically transformed as people may think it may, be, all these years on. However, at the same time, it certainly doesn't hurt. And we see talk in the US now about potential regulation change in places like Arizona and I think it's Utah. Like, the UK has been through that, and the UK has these different players. So it does facilitate more innovation and more change for sure. Overall impact, TBC. However, it does give an edge and an advantage when you think about other European markets, because they don't have that additional type of player that can come in and compete.
And also, I imagine the decision-making process is faster when you look at private equity-owned companies versus partner-owned firms.
Definitely, yeah. I think people often talk about the billable hour as being, a barrier to overall change and innovation, and that's absolutely true. What's also kind of adjacent to that is just overall ownership structures, and the partnership model makes it quite hard to change because you have many different owners of a business, and you need to do a lot of consensus building when it comes to change. And that inevitably slows things down. So you have different committees to make different decisions. And if you're making a change that, could potentially cannibalize some part of the business, well, that's going to hurt some equity owners, profits. So it does make it extra complex when you try to make a change with this kind of equity structure of the partnership model. Unlike organizations that are, say, private equity owned or other, say, even publicly listed, it's a different mindset in that the ownership structure is different. Decisions can get made in a different manner, faster, and there's less kind of barriers to change because they can move at that speed without having to deal with so many different owners.
You have an amazing newsletter. You have how many thousand subscribers by now?
Nearly 3,500 at this point.
So anyone listening, where can they subscribe to your newsletter?
Oh, yes. So if they go to titans.legal, is the kind of the consultancy site, and on that is the newsletter. I think also I have to double check the domain. I think if you go legaltechtrends.com, I think will potentially point directly to the newsletter itself.
Yeah, so folks do subscribe to that newsletter because it's really phenomenal. And one of the things I read today, because you sent one out this morning, is that Y Combinator sent out this publication basically calling out for new startups to attack the legal domain, right?
Exactly, yeah. So with Y Combinator, the most successful investment vehicle for early stage startups with the likes of Stripe, Airbnb, Reddit, and others. So what they do and say matters. And they effectively do different cohorts where they invest and take in startups. And for different cohorts, sometimes they kind of have a call out of, here are areas we think are interesting. Here are areas we want to target or invest in. And in the most recent one, over the last few days, they had mentioned different areas that they want to invest in. One of those being kind of AI full stack companies. And the example they gave was the legal example of, imagine a law firm being AI first. And yes, you could say, okay, that may be sometime in the future, and it's always more complex than just that. However, the main point, the fact they're even talking about legal, like that is a dramatic change to a couple of years ago where no one outside of legal gave a damn about legal. And the fact now you have all these technologists who have legal in their crosshairs. Yes, they're probably underestimating, as I said, the complexity and what's really involved, but still there's interest and desire there. And that is amazing. That is something we did not have before. And similarly, when you have the likes of OpenAI or Anthropic on their demo days and their days when they are giving legal examples, like that is, it just shows the direction of travel and the interest in an area from around the world. And that can't help but bring additional change and accelerate potential impact on the legal industry.
The other side of the spectrum, also from your newsletter, by the way, you mentioned McKinsey's report, actually maybe you can explain it best yourself. But what I got from it is that the legal professionals themselves are not as excited about AI as other sectors are.
Yes, so this specific report that they had recently done was an internal survey of their own McKinsey employees. And they'd asked a bunch of questions. And based off the responses people had given, they'd categorized them into 4 different categories. And more broadly, 2 categories of whether they were optimistic or pessimistic about the potential and the likely impact of AI. And from my recollection, I think pretty much everyone, or the majority of every domain was optimistic except for one. And that was the legal compliance function, which with the caveat that, okay, when you look at the specific questions, it was around, the impact and responsibility and how you might treat it. So naturally, based on the role and responsibilities of those in that department, they would naturally have skepticism for it or kind of a slightly different attitude. However, at the same time, it's very, very telling that even bearing that in mind, if that is the one department or the one area that was lagging the others, it's really important for people to remember that, at the end of the day, any technology change involves people, and you need to take into account the mindset and the culture of those who will be adopting the technology. And people often overlook that and think, oh, wonderful technology, amazing, just bring it in and it'll make all the change. But at this point anyway, AI agents aside, at this point, it's people who are using technology and people are adopting it. And you need to be mindful that there is a natural skepticism and wariness for new technology within the legal profession. And a lot of that is grounded in, fact that is their job and their role. But from my interaction of like interacting with, bringing in technology into firms, some of the earliest questions people will have will be, okay, well, what happens to the data? Is the technology provider training on this information, or can we remove our client data from this, at the suitable time? There's a lot of questions that matter, and it's important that they bring those up and are aware of those. But the broader, in summary, the mindset on legal professionals, there is a natural skepticism there based on the nature of the job, and people need to be aware of that when introducing technology.
Yeah, so there's basically two questions that I want to address now. Let's take them one by one, and you can choose which one to do first. One is adoption. So obviously, your clients are forerunners. They're the innovators. They aren't the rest of the market. Maybe they're the 1% of the 1%. But if we look at the total market, what does the adoption in the legal sector look like? And then the second question would be about how to go about adoption. So what's a good way to adopt legal AI?
Sure, yeah. So I'll take the first one. So the first one, what does adoption in the legal market look like more broadly? And I'll kind of break down into two categories. One is historically, and the second category is with AI. So historically, adoption of technology in legal is very low. That people would be amazed if they saw the amount of technology that's brought in and not used. The amount of shelfware that exists is super high. Adoption is incredibly hard for people to do, and unless people have been through that process of driving adoption, they do not have a full appreciation for just how hard it is. And there's many reasons for that. Example, lawyers are very time poor. They're under stress to do a lot of client work and get through, or even internal work within the legal department. The value of their hour is super high, so it's hard to get their time again. And just naturally, when push comes to shove, people will revert to what they're used to, then doing something new. So general sentiment of historically, technology adoption in legal is lower than people realize. Then the second point, okay, well, is it different with AI? What is different with AI for sure is the appetite for adoption. So previously, it was extra hard to get the time of people to attend training or to be involved in projects, whereas technology, the AI did flip that. So AI certainly has brought people to the table, where you have lawyers who have greater desire to kind of adopt technology and be involved. They've heard that this has a big impact for legal. They know that there is huge potential here, so that definitely brings appetite. At the same time, people need to be aware that it's still not easy, that even with AI and you have the appetite of end users, you still need to go through all the best practices that exist. This isn't a leapfrog moment for bring in AI and it can do amazing stuff. Yes, it can do amazing stuff, but people need to understand when to use it and how to use it and how to interact with it and how to check the outputs and all that stuff. So I would say that adoption broadly in the market is, again, probably lower than people perceive. There's amazing opportunities there, but at the same time, people need to be aware of treating this as they would other technology when going through the best practice of introducing it. And then on to the second point of how
Wait, before you do that, I just
Sure.
want to stress how blatant it basically is, because there's another report that I think you also mentioned in your newsletter of PwC, where the top 10 UK firms, only 14% of those top 10 UK firms actually monetize on AI. Right? So that basically shows that everybody is using this technology a little bit, making some efficiency improvements and basically passing them on to their clients. And none, or just one firm, and I actually don't know how they monetize it, but they are making money with the generative AI solutions. That's correct, right?
Yes, so the PwC annual, I think it was a report, I'd have to double check, on UK firms. So yes, but you're right when it comes to monetization. And part of the reason for that is a few different factors. One, the technology is expensive, right? So if you have this upfront cost of paying for licenses and paying for implementation and all the stuff around that, it will naturally take some time to get the return on that investment. And secondly, and what people who are more advanced are grappling with is, what does this mean for how we charge? That if you're paying a lot of money for a new technology and you charge by the hour and you've cut down your billable hours, where does the extra, where does the payback come from that?
Right. So we're paying money so that we can charge less, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's and kind of more generally in the market, it goes through kind of a wave where initially people are like, oh, will this have an impact or not? We're not too sure. And then the next phase is like, wow, yeah, this can really do amazing stuff if thoughtfully delivered. And then the third part is, what the hell does this mean for how we charge? If we can do stuff in days or hours that took us weeks before, how do we change how we approach this? And very few are at that point of really shaping their offering to take advantage of that. So that's kind of some of the additional context around how firms are struggling to, at this early point, and it must be said it's super early, to monetize it, because they're paying a lot for the technology and also for just general implementation and adoption phase. And if their model is charging by the hour and they're charging less hours, they need to have a real think about how they change that to monetize the implementation of AI.
Interesting. Okay, let's hear about the adoption. How do you do it correctly?
Yes. So I'll start off with saying how you don't do it correctly.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Which is always good, actually. So let's take the flip side of it. And I'd say you don't just pick any old technology, whack it in, and leave people at it and hope for the best. That's not how you do it. I'd say how you do it correctly is similar to, honestly, how you would do it with previous technology. Any other technology you deal with is you start off with the problem. You're like, okay, well, what are we actually looking to do here? And by really, really deeply understanding what is the problem that we are solving, what is the existing workflow for which we are introducing the tool? Who is involved in this type of work? What technology are they interacting with? What documents are they touching? What is the output? What additional data are they tapping into? You really, whenever we do it, it's like real deep process mapping of understanding this is how it is currently done, with an appreciation for where are the pain points and the pinch points here along this process. What do people actually care about? What is the stuff that takes the most time or frustrates them the most? And involving end users at a really early stage to really understand how that works. So even if you deeply understand the process in one firm, it will differ from firm to firm. So yes, the learnings from one area massively help with other engagements, but there's always nuance and really getting under the nuts and bolts of what people care about most and what is their deepest problem to solve. And then with the actual, once you understand that, it's having a super clear list of, okay, well, what are the requirements that we are actually looking to solve here based on this problem? And then going out to the market and looking at particular vendors. I think people can be very quick to go out and be like, oh, do all these different demos. It's like, well, how are you assessing these products? Mm-hmm. What determines what is suitable for fit here? You need to know what you're trying to solve first. Let's assume you've picked a great product with a great team, a great vision. Who will be?
Can I pause you?
Go for it.
Because I had a little bit of an epiphany listening to you, because there's the firms, and then there's the legal operations departments.
Yeah.
In other words, the legal departments. And for the firms, there's not really a problem to solve, because they get requests from their clients, and then they solve those problems and they charge by the hour. But if they look at the question of what is the problem, not only within their firm, basically stuff that they could do more efficiently and higher quality, but also within their clients' operations. Is that because there's a link there, and I hear from my clients, like my company side clients, that they're looking at their law firms for legal tech solutions as well. So is that an idea for firms to actually broaden their horizon and look at the problems of their clients when they look at technology?
Yeah, so break that into two parts. The first is relating to what kind of problems do firms have. And so even if firms are charging by the hour, there's often a lot of time that's written off, where it will take them longer than they would have expected to, and they'll simply not be able to charge for certain types of work.
Right.
And that really hits into their margins. So, or even as some type of work that they may do just as a value add or a discount rate. And that's the type of stuff you just want to do as quickly as possible. Then more broadly within that, they deeply care that their client is happy. So they can help with client happiness by having a better predictability of how the work is done, or better updates for the clients, or making sure that they have an understanding of the specific problems they're solving for that client. So there's still plenty of problems on the law firm side to solve.
Okay.
It's not just we charge by the hour, we can do what we like. It's very much, there are lots of stuff pain points that they want to do better, for sure. So that's the first piece. The second piece of in-house teams looking to law firms for advice and support when it comes to technology, absolutely. Yes, that now more than ever, it's never been harder for people to have a grip on what is really happening on the market and what is suitable for their needs. The market landscape and map has been dramatically redrawn and populated with hundreds of new vendors.
If not thousands.
If not thousands of the last 2 years. So it is incredibly hard for people to get a good grip of what is what. And yes, they're looking to law firms not just for and legal service providers, not just for the provision of legal advice, but also support and advice of what technology to buy. And actually interesting, for example, in the UK, it's very common for the larger firms that they'll have like a consulting arm as well, and they will be supportive for legal departments to help them go through the procurement cycle for picking technology. So that's quite common in the UK to do that, like legal operations consulting alongside the legal advisory arm of firms as well.
Yeah, we see that in Holland as well amongst the larger firms.
Yeah.
But this is probably a specialization that smaller firms should also start incorporating.
Yes, it's like if there's client appetite and demand for it, and there is, what I would say, it certainly requires a lot of thought and effort, because just as it is hard for the in-house teams to get a grip of the market, if the legal service providers are providing that advice to them, well, they need to have really talented, capable people who have that technology expertise to understand the market and advise appropriately and have people dedicated to doing it. It's not a side of desk job.
No.
Yes, you can give shove a slide in their face which has a map of vendors. That's useless. You need to have the deep knowledge of what is the client looking to do, what are the most suitable vendors for them, and support them on that journey. And the thing is, it's at face value, a lot of vendors look very similar, and you need to go deep to understand what is actually the best fit. And a huge part of adoption success is picking the best fit for a particular team and for a particular problem. And if people pick the wrong technology up front, well, you're fighting an uphill battle from then on.
Good. Okay, so now we know, let's say we know the problems.
Yes.
How do we get to, what's the next step now?
Yeah, so one of the main things, getting the right people together. So culture and mindset and culture buy-in is critically important. And ensuring that, and this should have been done in the identifying the problems, not just to solve, that people care about them, and aligning everything to solving those problems. And that's really, really important when it comes to the overall kind of narrative or framing of why you are doing this thing, that everything should be rooted back in that this is the reason why we're doing this thing. We are solving these problems for you, or we are achieving this outcome. And that is a consistent message and narrative that's, repeated at all points through the actual adoption phase. So people see the clear why. Yeah. What is the purpose of this thing? It's not just introducing technology or AI for the sake of it. It's, hey, we spoke with you, we understand your problems, and here is how we are directly addressing them for you. And because people don't care about just, it's kind of like any other technology. It's not about the tech. It's about solving problems. Tech is just an enabler to solve those problems. Yeah. And it's really rooting it in that. And also what massively helps when it comes to actually getting adoption of things is treating it like a hand-holding exercise, that you need to be super close to your users. So that would include things like weekly office hours to get people together to share what challenges have you faced, what are the wins that you have that you can share with other people, what is feedback that you have for the vendor, having a really close and small initial group. So start small, get your wins, and then expand from there. Involve the vendor very deeply as well. And so how I see it, so as Titans, we kind of often play the role of supporting for both our client, who's the buyer, and the vendor. And it's really a case of creating the canvas for the vendor to paint, to do a great job. Let them hit a home run is our take on it. It's ultimately, we won't be there forever. That's not our role. We help with change and facilitate a steady state. And the vendor needs to have a really close and tight relationship with the buyer. And we really want to facilitate that as much as possible. And how we kind of frame it is we'll set the standard for what needs to be met. And if it's not met or not going to be, we'll be very clear on it and we'll step in. But ultimately, we want it's success all around. Like, what success for us is that like really happy end users, delighted senior stakeholders within a client, and a vendor that is loved. So the vendor is like amazing, like this is a home run, this is one that everyone is happy with it, and we're just a facilitator to kind of enable that.
And you measure your success, I assume.
Totally, yeah. So you can do it from a few different angles. So one is like what's critically important when assessing products or introducing things. Firstly, on the product analytics side, so having a real clear view of, how frequently are people logging in, how frequently are people using various different features, and just getting a real clear objective data on that. And that's really important because like you want to, like ideally up front, and how I kind of think about this as well when it comes to measurement is kind of like with Facebook, right? When Facebook, I think their initial metrics was something like 7 friends. Once people had 7 friends, then that was the critical tipping point of you had sufficient. And it's kind of like if you were to say, give an example of so I'd say pre-execution document review tool involving playbooks. Create the playbook. You want them to hit, there's certain kind of key things you want them to do. And once they have done that, they've put in sufficient time and investment, or they've shown sufficient capability that there's a higher chance of success. Mm-hmm. But having really clear kind of actions you want to be able to have taken. Because if they haven't taken those actions, you're like, hey, that's a risk of, disengaging or not fully getting involved. Mm-hmm. So having really clear objectives of what you want people to do. And that should be like based on product analytics. You can clearly see who is using it and like early intervention and getting in touch with people. Hey, you're not using the product. Any challenges you're facing? How can we help? Really treat it as a hand-holding exercise so that you can say at any given point, here are our users. Here are the power ones. Here's why we know these people are using it less. And just like if someone was to objectively ask you, tell me about this user, that you could have that like deep knowledge of really having your finger on the pulse of how it's going.
And the equivalent of the 7 friends of Facebook for all the products that you've helped launch? Are you aware of those critical points?
Yeah, so it depends on product by product, and even like working with the vendors, but like, hey, we believe that this is what will be the critical point of like time to people to realize real value. Is this aligned with your perception of where people see the greatest value? Again, coming to the vendors, but look, what do you think are your killer use cases? What are the wow moments that once people have done that, then they'll get a real feel for the tool? Here's our perception of it. What is yours? And aligning on that, and like being super clear when looking at the product's dashboard, be like, okay, well, these are the things we want to hit. Yeah. How can we enable that? And then there's various different ways of doing that as the say pilots are progressing with like weekly updated emails, like feature spotlights on specific things, or calling out wins across the group. But really treat it as like it is a hand-holding exercise to make sure it's a success, because if you don't take that, it won't be.
I've heard you talk about wow moments, and I would love to hear some wow moments from you, because you're super excited about what you're doing with your innovative clients.
Yeah.
I know you can't give like real specifics of exactly what's happening, but can you give us a little bit of an idea of the kind of stuff that excites you?
Sure, absolutely. And what I can speak to that is public knowledge, for example, is Axiom recently released their white paper on the pre-execution document review pilot that they ran with Draft Pilot. And so within that, the use case or scenario is effectively reviewing third-party paper. So running playbooks against third-party documents to see, are there risks, apply red lines, add comments, that kind of thing. And I always wear kind of 2 hats. There's a hat of optimism and a hat of default skepticism for everything, right? We hear a lot in the market about AI, what is possible, what is not possible. There's a hell of a lot of hype out there, right? But being involved in that and like the seeing the results that came out of it around the time savings, the quality improvements, absolutely incredible. And it was really a case of like speaking with attorneys using it and coming off calls and be like, wow. Like really like just coming off calls smiling and be like, I did not realize we were at this point of this much impact. And genuinely being a case of I can't wait for this report to get out there and be released, because what I'm seeing is not what people are talking about. When you're that close, it's almost like you have this like internal secret of it. It's like people talking about hype and other stuff. I'm like, you haven't seen what I've seen. You haven't spoken to who I've spoken to. And that's what, like, as I say, it's that kind of stuff, when I see it and hear it directly from people, the type of feedback, frankly, I would not have believed it had I not heard it myself. Had I seen it elsewhere, I'd be like, okay,
that's marketing jargon.
That's marketing. Yeah. That's the vendor. That's whatever. Like, yeah. But like, I did it. I spoke to them. I saw it, and it was really a case of wow, real wow. And it's a real great proof point, because the thing is, unlike many pilots that are done on like dummy data in this like closed environment, this was all client contracts, all real projects across many different legal departments, real world scenarios. And the data was measured from speaking to them and really kind of digging into every single person that used that product. And super legitimate, which is like, yeah, for me, that was like one of the wow moments from what I've seen of legal, AI applied within legal.
And if you think about the domino effect of that particular use case, it's crazy, because, you know, the time to a deal will be shortened. Non-lawyers can do this work now too. So the costs will be less. I mean, the whole effect is just crazy.
Massively. And like, to give a really clear point example, so I use AI in all the work that I do, either whether it be consulting basis or even like legal contracting, that kind of stuff. And I can review contracts far faster. I can create new contracts far faster. And as a business, it's all just about getting the deal done. There's cost of delay, right? And any time that's done there, for me, like any time that's not client work is opportunity cost. Yeah. And just getting to focus on what matters for clients and getting away from admin or wasted time, there's a real tangible benefit. And as you said, that like at a massive scale across the market, people are adopting these tools. Huge. Yeah.
Very cool. I would like to dive in a little bit about, it's, you know, adjacent to what we're talking about, but a little bit different, the state of AI and how it's evolving. There's one spectrum with two sides. One side is the report that recently came out, the AI 2027 report, which shocked the world. And if you haven't, listeners, do Google AI 2027, just read it. Which basically points out that we'll get to some form of superintelligence by 2027. And then on the other side of the spectrum, there's AI is normal technology. Also a beautiful paper that came out. And those researchers are basically saying it's not going to go as fast as everybody's saying. I'm super curious where you are on that spectrum. What do you think is true? Is it the ones on the left, AI 2027, or the ones on the right, AI normal technology?
Yeah, so I'm a blend of the two, right? So on the AI 2027, from my understanding of some of the milestones they are talking about, is initially being able to kind of automate a lot more coding. And then once you reach that point of automating the software creation, the next point is being able to like do more automation of the research element of it. And the example they're giving, they talk about, coding agents and research agents. And if I think about my use of AI tools, like two of my wow moments within that would be recently building effectively apps through speaking to them. Just being able to, this is what I want, a little prompt in, and then moving on actually to voice prompting. And seeing what was built there in minutes, like under 30 minutes, what was built, I was like, I did not realize we were this far progressed.
Yeah, you're into vibe coding.
Yeah, so it's funny, right? Because I've spoken to numerous friends, they have kind of mixed results. What I've done with it, I've had amazing results.
Really?
Yeah, I think maybe partially is that, because like how my preference for interacting with AI is through voice. So I'll give a big voice note. Here's all the things I want, huge context for it. And my results have been brilliant. So that was kind of a little data point I'd have for this paper about how advanced the coding agents could get. Well,
can I get a little specific on that? So the voice note that you make, is that something you make in your iPhone? You talk to, or do you actually use the voice mode of OpenAI or whatever tool you're using?
Yeah, so initially it used to be using my mobile to ChatGPT on my mobile to use the voice record function, because it didn't have voice recording on the web.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I built a voice transcription tool because I wanted to be able to easily transcribe my voice on my laptop, rather than recording my phone and then going to ChatGPT on the laptop. So that's what I built with no code, with the vibe coding app, Lovable, and then was able to iterate and improve on that again through voice because it was transcribing everything I was doing. And I could use that to then put that into ChatGPT. Now ChatGPT also has the voice transcription feature. I actually don't use that because it's an extra click, whereas I preferred having just the hotkeys on the laptop. And yeah, so when I interact with it, where I've seen best results is giving loads of context through a voice note, still using all the best practice of prompting, right? Still, because fundamentally, how I see the best interactions with AI is when you treat it like delegating to a human.
Yeah.
If you leave out any instructions, it will fill in the blanks, and oftentimes the blanks it fills in are potentially not exactly what you want. Mm-hmm. But if you give really detailed instruction to someone or to AI, it does a really good job of fulfilling that.
Yeah.
And that's how I treat it, just giving a voice. It could be like, 3-5 more minutes of here's all the context, here's what I'm doing, and just talking it out and give it that. And that coupled with GPT 4.5, like another, so I get like the outputs of that, I'm like, I see it like carving into more and more of the work I do. And where previously I would have thought, there's all this type of tasks I do, I don't think AI will be able to get there. And like now I'm regularly thinking that island of what I can do and AI cannot do is shrinking very quickly. And so when I think about this report of AI 2027, it's with my skepticism hat on, I'd say, no, I don't think we'll get there that fast. And even then, they themselves say, even to get to certain milestones within a year is like a 50% chance or so.
Yeah, they're not saying 100%. No.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I have multiple hats on that. One is skepticism hat, say, no, I don't think we'll get there that fast. The other hat is we're definitely progressing way faster than I thought we would. When I had that moment with building software, again, with the caveat, this is not enterprise type software, it's personal usage from a product person building something.
Fair enough.
That was still, this is way more advanced than I thought we were. And when I now see the outputs of GPT 4.5 coupled with all the context I give from a voice note, it was a dramatic step change from the outputs I would have from even just 4.0. For the first time, I was like, objectively, this is not even, it's not just like getting close to what I do. In many cases, this is better than I am. And it's the kind of getting that appreciation for the fact of initially AI, I kind of see it as infinite interns. Here are all these low-level tasks, do this text manipulation, yeah. Then it was getting to a point of real thought partnership, right? Fill in, help me ideate, help me fill in the gaps. And now it's like, in many ways, I'm like, I can see these different areas in which this is better than me. And like, even in domains, like I've been technology consulting for over 10 years. And even the stuff I'm doing, yes, when I give it the suitable context, I'm like, but the output, I'm like, I can see how this is better than my thinking on this thing, or I can see how this perspective adds. And right now it's amazing because time to do stuff dramatically decreased, quality improves, but also there's a degree of scariness of like, how far will this go? Given how far we've come and how far we continue to go. So that's on the side of, as I said, coming back again to your question of how likely it is for AI 2027, default skepticism, at the same time totally open-minded to the speed surpassing anything that we kind of have predicted. Then on the other side of AI as normal tech, where the main kind of point was, well, the actual diffusion of technology is usually quite slow. That there are a lot of bottlenecks you will face when introducing any technology. This is absolutely true in large enterprises. The procurement cycle for technology, take your pick. Is it 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24? Like, it takes a long time to get new technology. And again, it takes a long time for adoption to come. So yes, that is always slower than people who haven't been in that world appreciate or realize. However, counter argument is people are looking at previous waves of technology and saying, it took this long for cloud to kind of be implemented. Or look at mobile phone. Yes, the iPhone was brought out and took however many years to reach a large portion of the population. But the thing is, those technologies are out there and we're building on them. And that kind of is a foundation and facilitation for the acceleration of new technologies coming through. And the proliferation of the likes of ChatGPT is like the most adopted technology ever. And it's not, because it's so applicable to day-to-day things, along with whatever happens in the workforce, it's not crazy to think that that will be adopted faster. And definitely, if I think about tangible data points from what I see in the enterprise, it has opened up people's imagination and appetite like no technology I've ever seen, for sure. Adoption is still hard, but there's an interest and appetite that was never there before. So that's a long way of saying I sit somewhere in the middle. Right. However, I definitely am open to the idea that the pace of improvement gets incredibly fast and definitely to a degree potentially scary.
My take on this is that even if we don't get to like super intelligence, if only a fraction happens of what is written in this report, let's say 10% or 20% of what's written in this report, it has enough impact on the legal sector for it to change so dramatically in comparison to where it is right now. Yeah. Is it fair to say that leaders of law firms should get people in who are not lawyers to think about this stuff with them?
Absolutely. And it's why I laugh is because sometimes I often see law firms that advertise for innovation roles or different legal tech roles with the mandate of someone need to be legally qualified. And for me, that is astonishing. It's so funny. I'm an engineer coming into an environment like this idea that you need to have studied the thing or done the thing. Like if we think about other domains, you don't necessarily want a pilot to have built your software for the plane. People have different roles, and me coming from a background of operating in many different industries, like people can pick up things absolutely. And the thing is, yes, it's critically important to work with domain experts. Absolutely, like there's no way that some people will be able to match the technical legal knowledge that certain people have, but you need that outside perspective. And just as I'd say many within technology, it's important that they give suitable respect to the legal knowledge of those subject matter experts. Similarly, it's important for lawyers to give the level of respect for the technologists or the change managers and all those other disciplines. Lawyers are incredibly smart, absolutely. Market is full of intelligent people, but it doesn't necessarily mean that if you're moving from a specialist domain into technology or something else, that you are equally proficient in that new thing. Exactly.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I've had this thrown to my head once when I was working for Royal Dutch Shell, where they say, they actually said to me, "We love diversity, but you're just too diverse." You're like, that's too much diversity. Please leave. Yeah. And this is what you don't want. You really want people in the room. Like I interviewed Chris Williams. He's a good example of someone from, he did music before this, and he's super creative. And
great guy.
That's the type of people like you, other people, from outside, because I think some radical changes are going to happen, and so you need to be bold and you need to be open-minded, and the only way to become more open-minded is to be more diverse in your team, I think. Is there anything else you would like to share with our listeners?
As a takeaway message, because I think that we've mentioned about different scenarios that could play out with AI, what I would say is that it is an incredibly exciting time for people who are curious and prepared to get hands-on and lean in. That for those in the legal market, like, what an exhilarating place to be if you embrace it and run towards it. The future is hugely uncertain, but I would bet heavily on AI having a bigger and bigger impact over the coming years. So if you're to make one bet in like navigating this uncertain future, it's get comfortable, competent, and confident with AI, because it's like a good way of phrasing I heard is like, this is the worst it's going to be for the rest of your lifetime. Like, we have many years ahead of us, hopefully, and it's only been a mainstream. Yes, we've had our other machine learning, traditional AI for longer, but like, we've only had this like latest breed of AI for a handful of years, and it's already dramatically improving. So expect huge improvements and lean in.
Great. One more time, where can people find you?
So people can go to titans.legal, which is the website for Titans Consultancy, or they can go to legaltechtrends.com, which is also a page on the Titans website specifically for the newsletter, or find me on LinkedIn, Peter Duffy.
Thank you so much, Peter.
Cheers. Thank you very much, Pim.
Thank you for listening to Beyond Billable. This podcast was produced by Anko Scholtens and is a collaboration with NIO House Amsterdam.